The stormy night carried with it a strange kind of silence, the kind that makes even the strongest hearts uneasy. In a sprawling mansion perched on the edge of the city, every light seemed to shine, yet no warmth reached the home's walls. Inside those walls lived a story of absence, pain, and longing, a story of two children, twins born into unimaginable wealth, but who had not felt the arms of their father, the millionaire, for 3 long years. The house was filled with servants, with luxury, with every toy a child could ask for, but the one thing missing was the one thing they wanted most: their father's presence. It began 3 years earlier when Edward Lawson, a powerful business magnate, lost himself in the ruthless demands of his empire. His wife had passed away tragically, leaving him shattered, but instead of finding solace in his children, he drowned himself in work, building walls of glass and steel around his grief. The twins, Ethan and Emily, then only 7 years old, had clung to each other for comfort, their laughter dimming with each day he failed to return home before they were asleep. They wrote him notes, left drawings on his desk, begged to see him, but Edward buried himself deeper in meetings, flights, and boardrooms, convincing himself he was providing for them. Into this house of silence came Rosa, a black maid hired through an agency. She was in her late 30s, with kind eyes that spoke of hardships endured and wisdom earned. Her presence was quiet, yet she carried an aura that filled empty spaces. Rosa noticed what others ignored. She noticed the untouched toys, the children's eyes wandering to the door at every car that pulled up, the way Emily hugged her brother when they heard footsteps that never belonged to their father. Rosa was not just there to clean the marble floors or polish the grand chandeliers. She was there when the children's hearts were breaking. One evening, she found Emily crying softly in the corner of the library, holding a family photograph, with her mother's fading smile and Edward's arm around the twins. "Why doesn't Daddy see us?" Emily whispered. Rosa knelt down, wrapping her arms around the little girl. She didn't give false promises, but she whispered words that stuck like seeds in the child's heart. Sometimes grown-ups forget what truly matters, but love never disappears. It just needs to be reminded. Rosa became more than a maid. She became the anchor, the storyteller, the one who listened. She helped with homework, mended scraped knees, and turned bedtime into a ritual of warmth. Slowly, she became the closest thing the twins had to family. Yet deep inside, Rosa felt the injustice burn. She knew the children needed their father, not just her kindness. Her chance came when Edward finally returned to the mansion one night after a trip abroad. The clock struck midnight, and he walked in, briefcase in hand, exhausted but armored. In the pride of his success, he barely noticed the drawings the twins had left on the hallway table. Rosa stepped forward. "Sir," she said firmly, though respectfully, "your children are growing without you." Edward frowned, not used to being spoken to in such a way by a maid. "I'd provide everything they could ever need. Everything." Rosa replied softly, "Accept yourself. They don't need your money. They need their father." Her words struck him like a blow, but instead of anger, Edward laughed bitterly, masking his pain. "You wouldn't understand," he muttered, brushing past her. But Rosa did understand. She saw in his eyes the grief he refused to face. She saw the fear of breaking if he allowed himself to love again. From that night, Rosa made it her mission not to lecture Edward, but to open his heart. She involved the twins in things that forced traces of their father back into their lives. She left their drawings where he couldn't ignore them, on his study desk, in his briefcase, even slipped inside his schedule book. She encouraged the twins to record small voice messages, telling him about their day, which she managed to play softly on his phone when he came home late. She cooked meals with the children and made sure Edward's plate was set with theirs, even when he was absent. Slowly, invisible threads began weaving. The breakthrough came on Emily's 10th birthday. The twins had planned a small performance for Rosa, singing a song they had practiced. They wanted their father there, but deep down, they knew not to hope. Rosa, however, decided this was the moment to do the impossible. That morning, she stood in Edward's office. "Sir," she said quietly but firmly, "today is your daughter's birthday. She has been practicing for weeks, waiting for you. If you miss this, you will lose more than time, you will lose them." Edward's jaw tightened. His instinct was to dismiss her. But then, Rosa placed in his hand a small music box that Emily cherished. "She wanted to give you this when you came home last year. You never came." Edward opened the box. The melody filled the room, fragile and haunting. His composure cracked. For the first time in years, he let his heart listen. And so, that evening, when the twins stood nervously in the living room, about to sing their song to Rosa, they gasped. Their father was standing in the doorway. "Go on," Edward whispered, his voice breaking. "Sing." The children's voices trembled. At first, then grew stronger. Edward sat down, tears running down his face as he clutched the music box. When the song ended, silence hung heavy, broken only by Emily's hesitant step forward. "Daddy, are you really here?" He pulled them both into his arms, holding them as though he would never let go again. Rosa stood back, her heart swelling. She had done what seemed impossible. She had healed a broken family. From that day, Edward changed. Slowly, but with determination, he rearranged his life. Meetings were rescheduled, flights postponed. Dinner became a sacred ritual. He walked his children to school when he could, listened to their stories, and even tucked them into bed. Rosa remained by their side, no longer just a maid, but part of the family's heartbeat. Years later, when Ethan and Emily graduated from high school, Edward stood proudly between them, his arms around their shoulders. Rosa sat in the front row, tears glistening in her eyes. She had not just cleaned a mansion, she had rebuilt a home. The story of the millionaire and his twins was not about wealth, but about rediscovery. It was about a maid who saw not just floors and walls to be polished, but wounds to be healed. She had believed love could return, and because she believed, the impossible became possible. And so the message lingered. Money can build empires, but love builds families. Sometimes it takes the courage of one ordinary heart to remind us of what we have forgotten. As the years passed, the Lawson mansion no longer felt like a hollow palace of wealth, but a living home filled with laughter, warmth, and love. The twins, once lonely children longing for their father's embrace, had grown into confident young adults who knew the value of family above all else. Edward Lawson, once blinded by grief and consumed by ambition, had rediscovered the very thing money could never buy, the joy of being present in the lives of his children. And Rosa, the maid who had once been hired only to clean, became the heart that stitched their family back together. She was proof that greatness isn't measured by riches, but by compassion and courage. She had reminded a millionaire of what truly mattered, and in doing so, changed not only the children's lives, but his as well. Standing together years later, Edward with his arms around his twins, Rosa smiling quietly at their side, the truth was undeniable. Wealth can build empires, but it cannot build a family. Only love, sacrifice, and courage can do that. And sometimes, it takes the heart of the most unexpected person to make the impossible possible. In the end, Rosa had not just changed their household, she had changed their legacy forever.